Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Columbia online. We are so glad to be together and joining together across Columbia, across mid-Missouri, across the state and country, and perhaps across the world, particularly if there are those joining us on Facebook from elsewhere. We want to welcome our friends from the UU Fellowship in Jefferson City. Thank you for joining us. And we want to welcome all of you warmly into our online worship space. We are learning more than ever that the church is not the building, but the community, and it is so good to be together this morning. A few notes about tech. As you have probably noticed, we are in a Zoom webinar, which means that you do not have audio or video as participants, that you'll only see our panelists this morning. And we will hold a coffee hour after our worship service where you'll have time to see and chat with one another. You have probably also noticed that the chat was not open for everyone to talk with each other when we were first arriving. And that was because we've heard about some instances of trolling at our sister UU churches across the country. And so we're just being a little careful with the space that we create together. But I would like to ask our tech hosts, and thank you to our tech hosts for helping us this morning, Dottie and Holly and Jenny. I'd like to invite our tech hosts to go ahead and open up the chat now for a time for us to check in with one another, and would just love to see in the chat how you're doing as we begin our time together. So feel free to say hello now. The way that you chat with everyone is by changing it to all panelists and attendees. And those were all the words of welcome that I wanted to share with you this morning. I did want to say if we do end up with someone who is not having good intentions in our chat, then our tech hosts will take care of it. So know that if we see unpleasant things there at any point, that that's not the spirit of our community, and that we will make sure that we keep our space as safe of a place for everyone as we can. But it's good to see everyone saying hello and checking in. Good morning to everyone. Sure miss seeing you all, and certainly looking forward to our coffee hour when we'll get to see each other's faces together after the service. So I'm going to go ahead and begin with our opening words. This is a poem that was written this week by my colleague, the Reverend Teresa Inés Soto, and it's titled "The Becoming of the World, Our Hearts." She writes, "I can see you and feel you grieving over the world that used to be, the times, places, and events, but mostly the people you had hoped to be near, to breathe with, without penalty of danger, death. For the lives we were meaning to live, while the ones allotted to us we also lived, that sacred gap, both hope and disappointment. For how hard things are, and by hard, I mean unpredictable and uncertain. It may be true that the lives we imagined were not certain, but they gave us a map of what to expect. And now things feel much flatter, and you are wondering if you have sailed off the edge. You have not, but we are coming to the edge of what we know. Pema Chodron calls this groundlessness, when we are in the moment facing dragons, unknowns, in the now and now and now, and no reference to the past and no inkling of the future. We will need to hold the grief we share loosely, like a river rushing by. There is no resisting, as we grieve the groundlessness itself. Your heart is telling you the truth. Your grief is real and reasonable. One day it will be past, but that is not today. It is not for weeks to come. We have been each other's magnitude and bond. Let us now be each other's witness and each other's ground. Thank you to Reverend Soto for those beautiful words to begin our time, to center us. And I'd like to invite you to enter into a moment of centering and singing and breathing together from our homes, knowing that in a time of global pandemic, breathing and singing about breathing is a poignant and powerful act. And so I'd like to invite you now into our gathering hymn, 1009, Meditation on Breathing. We're going to use the video I made a couple of weeks ago with all the parts in it, so feel free to choose whichever part speaks to you, and join from your homes in lifting up our voices across our town and county and country and world. Meditation on breathing.
Breathe in, breathe out. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe in, I breathe out loud. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe in, I breathe out loud. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out loud. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out loud. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out loud. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out loud. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out loud. Last one. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out,
I think we had a little tech blip there. And can you hear me now, folks? So will you please join me? I think you couldn't hear Candy. So will you please home on the words of affirmation that are now on your that are not on your screen anymore. Uh, that we say together each week. If you know them, please say them. Love the spirit of this church, and service is its law. Um,
Can people hear me? Good. In the reading, Molly talked about, good morning, I'm Jamil Batchelder, our Director of Religious Education. I should introduce myself to all of our visitors. In the reading, Reverend Molly referenced the idea of groundlessness, and it's such a disorienting feeling, made more disorienting in that we are grasping for a future certainty that doesn't exist. And instead, we can try to orient ourselves in the now, which does exist. And that still won't give us a ground, but it will give us a sense of orientation. So we are going to try that now to orient ourselves in this time and place that we have right now. And so I want you to begin by taking a few deep breaths. And then I would like you to orient with your senses. And so first I want you to look around the space you are and just to notice what is there. And you can share it in the chat, what you are seeing with your eyes, what is right here with you right now. I see candle, a big tree out the window budding, sunshine, shadows, the red buds, a cat, a dog, wires and screws, the family, birds, our candles on our altars, the laundry that needs folding. So much that is so real and so here and so now. And now I want you to focus on your sense of hearing and see what it is you're hearing in this moment. And you can share that too in the chat. Yelling children, quiet, silence, the hum of the computer, the humidifier, the clock ticking, all the things that make up life. And last, let's take a moment and take in a deep breath. And what is it you smell in your house right now? The lit match, tea, coffee. Nothing much. Puppy smells and cleaning supplies, a dog and coffee, 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 coffee. That's where you use. And so take a few more moments to breathe into this space, into this now. And try to let go of searching for the future, because what exists right now is now. And now I'll send it back to Molly.
So much in this moment, so much that we're experiencing. Stacy Pottinger, one of our members, brought me a new chalice and left it on my porch. it's a dumpster fire. Because that's what some people feel like they're experiencing in this moment, is a little bit of a dumpster fire chalice. And I think our sense of humor will help us get through these times. And what will really help us get through these times is the presence of our community to all that we hold together. And that is something that we share together each week as we share the joys and sorrows of our community. And so I'm now going to invite you into a time of sharing those joys and sorrows in the chat. But first, I'm going to start with a few that folks wanted to be sure were spoken aloud. And so we've started a new part of our webpage where you can submit your joys and sorrows that you want to be sure that the ministry staff knows about and that you want to be sure are spoken aloud. I'm going to share that with you now in the chat so that you can have it for the future to submit your joys and sorrows. And this is because the ones in the chat roll by pretty quickly, and it can be hard to see and keep track of all of them. And so if there's something that you want to be really sure that we know about, please do go and submit it there. And so I have a few submissions for this Sunday, and then I'll ask you to share your joys and sorrows in the chat. Our hearts are with Kenna Byerly, who shares concern for Rob Bartell and Elaine Martin. Rob, as many of you know, had a stroke and is on a long recovery path and has been rehospitalized with complications. And we are particularly holding him in heart, and particularly holding in heart Elaine, who can't visit him because of the restrictions around the pandemic. We'd like to join our hearts with Wayne Anderson, who has kidney cancer. We'd like to share our hearts with Wayne Anderson, whose kidney cancer has metastasized and who has entered hospice care this week. He is doing all right at this moment. He is giving thanks for his very beautiful and interesting and long life, and he welcomes notes by mail or email, which can be found in our directory. We join our hearts with an unnamed loved one who shares worry for a relative who has gone off their psychiatric medicines, and this person is very, very worried about their relative. We join our hearts with an unnamed loved one who shares that one of their tenants is presumed positive for COVID-19 and won't be able to make the rent. And this loved one of our community is very worried about that person's health and safety, and also worried about their own financial well-being and holding all of the complicated worries at this time. We join our hearts with Kathy Bergman, who shares greetings from our Minister Emeritus, the Reverend Bill Haney, and his wife, Loretta. They live in Bellingham, Washington, where there has been an outbreak at a nursing home, but Kathy wants to assure us that Bill and Loretta are well and are wishing us well. And then I want to be sure and share love and meaningful wishes to all of our Jewish members and friends and neighbors who will begin observing Passover this week. Passover is a celebration of liberation that has occurred in many odd and difficult times across generations. And we know that our Jewish friends and neighbors may be mourning not being able to gather with family and friends for their seders, but that certainly the human spirit will persevere through that. We join our hearts with Megan Gore and Lance, who share celebrations that they have not lost their jobs in this time. And I'd now like to invite you all to continue, if you'd like, sharing your sorrows and prayers in the chat, and I will try and catch some of them as they go by. sorrow for a canceled visit, sorrow for Casey's mom passed away, and gratitude that she went peacefully as she wished, concern for a loved one in a mental health crisis, concern about someone working in a hospital, sorrow for the youth group's conference that was canceled that was to be happening right now. Sorrow for being separated from family. And then gratitude as well, joy for time with family. Joy for being able to find calm. Concern for Columbia's unhoused community after the closing of the crisis shelter. We share that deep concern. Concern for the well-being of family members working in healthcare. We share so many joys and sorrows in this time. So poignant to hold them together across distance. And yet we hold them something together. That we share together each week as we share the joys and sorrows of our community. What is happening? Concern for the tech adventure that we're on and how we can make our way through it. Joy for finding new and different ways to connect. We hold all of these things together, and please feel free to continue sharing in the chat. We're going to move into our sung prayer, our prayer response hymn. And we are really grateful to Sam Buffalo for creating a video of our hymn this week. It's There Is More Love Somewhere. And he's created a really beautiful little clip for us. And I invite you to join in singing from home as we share together There Is More Love Somewhere, a song that was that was born out of hard times and separations in the time of enslavement in our country, a song that can hold us now.
There is more love somewhere. Okay, can you hear me? All right. This morning's reading is by Marge Piercy. It's called To Have Without Holding. Learning to love differently is hard. Love with the hands wide open, love with the doors banging on their hinges, the cupboard unlocked, the wind roaring and whimpering in the rooms, rustling the sheets and snapping the blinds, that thwack like rubber bands in an open palm. It hurts to love wide open, stretching the muscles that feel as if they are made of wet plaster, then of blunt knives, then of sharp knives. It hurts to thwart the reflexes of grab, of clutch, to love and let go again and again. It pesters to remember the lover who is not in the bed, to hold back what is owed to the work that gutters like a candle in a cave without air, to love consciously, conscientiously, concretely, constructively. I can't do it, you say, it's killing me, but you thrive. You glow on the street like a neon raspberry. You float and sail, a helium balloon, bright bachelor's button blue and bobbing on the cold and hot winds of our breath as we make and unmake in passionate diastole and systole the rhythm of our unbound bonding, to have and not to hold, to love with minimized malice, hunger and anger, moment by moment, balanced. There ends the reading.
Thank you, Candy. To have and not to hold. This last week, Jamila shared with me a video that she had seen, and it's of a nurse in Riyadh in Saudi Arabia. And it's a video of this nurse coming in his door to his home, and in an act that is familiar perhaps to some, his toddler joyfully begins to run toward him with arms stretched out. And it's the speaking is in Arabic, but you know that he's saying, "Daddy, Daddy," and running with arms out. And it's just this brief video, and it's just this brief moment, but you see this nurse begin to do what any parent would do, begin to do what he's probably done 100 times. He starts to lean towards his child. And then you see him realize that that's not safe. And as the child is running towards his father, "Daddy, Daddy," arms outstretched, this nurse starts to back away and say, "No, no, no." And as he backs away, he just crumbles to the floor and starts to cry. Because suddenly it's not safe for him to do the thing that he knows to do as a human, to love his child, to comfort them, to take them into his arms. And to me, this is one of the most poignant, brief moments that encapsulates the experience we're having right now of love in the time of COVID. We humans have this beautiful instinct in our bones for giving and receiving love. And there are as many diverse ways to express that love as there are human hearts and bodies and brains. And yet, no matter how our love is expressed, I believe deeply that it is with and between and around and beyond all of us. And one of the things that is the most difficult about this pandemic time is that so much of what we are being asked and required to do goes against many of our loving instincts. So many of the ways that we have learned to give comfort and express love are now forbidden to us or unsafe. And so, what does it mean to love in the time of COVID? How do we do it? The poem Candy just read, To Have Without Holding by Marge Percy, is one of my sacred texts because it teaches me something I always need to learn about loving with a passionate heart and a loose grip. I have learned over years from this poem about a kind of love that frees, the kind of love that finds its preciousness exactly in the sure knowledge of loss. And I have read this poem again and again many times. But reading it this week was really different, way more literal. What is it to have without holding? To love without clutching or even touching? How do we sustain an unbound bonding? These questions are no longer spiritual ponderings to address at our leisure. They are extremely urgent, extremely visceral and real. Many of us now cannot hold each other. Many of us are staring love and loss right in the face, and we are helpless. We cannot grab and clutch. The letting go that is spiritually wise at other times is painful and enforced now. We are helpless, and there's nothing that we want more than to help people we cannot help now because it endangers them and the people who are helping them. We know in this pandemic that there are people dying alone. And it has been this way before, and perhaps it will be this way again, but we are humans and we know that we should not be alone. We need to give love and we need to receive it. And curse this virus for separating us when we need each other most. Curse this virus for keeping me away from ministering at a deathbed. Curse this virus for keeping a partner away from her love's side in the hospital. Curse this virus for keeping a mother working in healthcare away from her child for their own safety. Curse this virus for making us doubt or regret that hug that we gave before we knew better. Curse it. And I almost use stronger language, but you can imagine it. Or you can say it in your own home. And the cursing makes me feel a little better. But love in the time of COVID is helpless love. A forced release into trusting our love to a world that is not treating our love tenderly. Love in the time of COVID is love in a whirlwind, and love in long stretches of boredom, and love in overwhelm, and love in isolation. It is, as Percy writes, love with the doors banging on their hinges, the muscles stretched beyond what feels possible. Helpless love in the time of COVID is twined with fear and twinned with loss. It is a love frustrated from the full expression that love demands. And our frustrated feelings creep out sideways and through the cracks. Maybe you've been showing some frustration to the people around you. But if our frustration creeps through the cracks, I want to suggest today that so does that frustrated love. Human love is a crawling vine that will find its way through every barrier. I believe human love is inexorable. I have seen that it is insistent and creative. Love in the time of COVID is helpless, but it is not hopeless. We have seen already so many examples of the creativity and insistence of human love. The nurse spending extra time he does not have with an isolated patient who is scared and alone. The doctor holding her phone at the bedside for parted loved ones to speak words of comfort. The video calls, the corona caroling, the bear hunts for kids through the neighborhood, the ovations and food and songs for healthcare providers, the GE workers walking out demanding to make ventilators, the teachers driving by their students' houses, the virtual concerts, the Instacart workers striking for their families, and those needing groceries refusing to cross the picket line, the mutual aid, the virtual game nights, the free meals, the emergency shelters, the outpouring of art and so much art. Every day we are witnessing the insistence of human love. Every day we are learning more ways to say, I love you. We know from millennia of human experience that we can be separated from our loved ones, but we cannot be separated from love. We learn from ancestors who have been separated from their loved ones by varying forces of trauma, separated by fences, separated across oceans, separated by arbitrary borders, separated across hundreds of miles of cotton fields, separated by force, separated by fear, separated by choice, separated because it was the only way to survive, separated in pain and heartbreak from the body of their beloved, but never separated from the love for and of those beloveds. Never separated from the love that makes its way out into the world, even when our loved one is not near enough to receive it. Love finds a way to expression across generation. Love comes out in poetry, love comes out in song, but mostly love comes out in everything we do in the world with our beloved's name on our breath. Perhaps you are napping with your faraway loved one's body in your dreams. Perhaps you are crying with your faraway loved one's face in your mind. Perhaps you are working with your loved one's well-being in your heart. That matters. That is you loving, even if your loving is without holding. Love in the time of COVID has created 100 different experiences. Some of us are loving in crowded, close quarters. Some of us are loving from a distance. We are loving in sickness and in health. We are loving through fear. We are loving unto death. We are loving beyond death. We are heartbroken to be loving in these circumstances. We can't do it. It's killing us. But that heartbreak too is our love. Love in the time of COVID looks like worry. It looks like snipping at the person we trust the most in the world because it has to come out somewhere. Love looks like yelling at our beloved who is not taking this seriously enough. Love looks like exhaustedly rocking a tantruming child. Love looks like profound helplessness. Love looks like phone calls with friends you haven't spoken to in a decade. It looks like video chats and letters and care packages opened joyfully and carefully after 3 days quarantine. Love looks like crying in bed at night after a long day on the front lines, aching for the one we cannot hold. Love looks like numbness and grief. Love looks like staying apart and staying home even when it's making us crazy. Love even looks like stepping away from the one we most want to run toward. Perhaps many of us thought our love would never look like this, and it is not how we want it to be, but it is still love. And so, my dear ones, I just want to tell you that this time will pass, and we will stretch our arms out again, and we will step toward each other and not away again. And we will still be helpless because that's what love does. And always, even now, our love will be inexorable, inalienable, holy and whole. I love you. I feel your love. We are losing so much, but that cannot be lost. And so I'd like to invite you into a moment of contemplation, to ponder the ways that your love is making its way out into the world, perhaps unexpected ways. And if you'd like, you can share some of those ways in the chat. How is love being irresistible in making its way out into the world in your life? Phone calls and puzzles, FaceTime lunches, more frequent calls, making masks, Zooming with grandchildren, digital happy hour, messaging, tea time, watching grandbabies play from almost 2,000 miles away, making masks and so many masks, online chess with grandfather, car visits from afar with air hugs, more phone calls, even when that's hard to do, cooking, caring for a child, telephone waving, shouting down the street. There are so many ways that our love is making its way into the world, and it cannot and it will not stop. Amen. I'd like to invite you now into a time of sharing our love through giving. We're going to join in our weekly celebration of generosity by sharing our offering. And we're going to do that by listening to a beautiful song that one of Jeremy's choirs, Vox Nova, that he sings in, has just recorded from a distance. And we are going to hear that, and there'll be a link on the screen if you would like to go make a contribution to the church online. And let's enjoy a moment of beautiful centering music.
Tell me where is the road
Lovely. Thank you for that, Jeremy and Vox Nova. I'd like to share a prayer for us today. And this is a rethinking of Psalm 23 by Kevin Tarsa. I invite you now into the spirit of prayer or contemplation as you are moved. May I remember in this tender moment that love is my guide always, shepherding me toward ways of openness and compassion. I have what I need, really, with love at my side, above me, below me, in front of me, behind me, inside every cell of me, love infused everywhere. Just when the weight of the world I inhabit threatens to drop me in place and press my hope down into the ground beneath me, love invites me to rest for a gentle while and leads the center of my soul to the quiet, still restoring waters that somehow I had not noticed. And so love quietly sets me once again on its tender and demanding path. Even when the walls close around me and the cries of death echo through untold corners, gripping my heart with fear and sadness, I know that all will be well, that I will be well when love whispers near to me, glints at the corner of my eye, rests with gentle and persistence invitation upon my shoulders. Yes, love blesses me, even as the sources and symbols of my pain look on. Love blesses me from its infinite well, and I turn and notice that goodness and kindness and grace follow me everywhere I go. I live in a house of love, love that will not let me go. I live in a house of love and always will. And we're gonna join together in singing one more time. This hymn is a Hebrew song, Bashana Haba'ah. We're gonna sing the English translation. And we're thinking again once more of our Jewish friends and neighbors who will gather, whether digitally or in person in their home for Passover Seders starting this week. But this particular hymn, I think, has a particularly poignant meaning for our time together now. And so the lyrics will be up on the screen and Jeremy will lead us. I invite you to join in singing from home as you're moved.
Soon the day will arrive when we will be together, and no longer will we live in fear. And the children will smile without wondering whether on that day thunder clouds will appear. Wait and see what a world there can be if we share, if we care, you and me. Wait and see what a world there can be if we share, if we care, you and me. Some have dreamed, some have died to make a bright tomorrow, and our vision remains in our hearts. Now the torch must be passed with new hope, not in sorrow, and a can be if we share, if we care, you and me. Wait and see what a world there can be if we share, if we care, you and me.
I now share our closing words from the Reverend Wayne Arneson. Take courage, friends. The way is often hard, the path is never clear, and the stakes are very high. But take courage, for deep down there is another truth. You are not alone. Even now, even in this time of separation, you are not alone. I hope that you will go and let your love come inexorably into the world. Go in blessing and be a blessing to a world that needs our care. And I invite you to put your hand over your heart or hold the hands of the people in your home and join us in singing our benediction across the miles that are between us.
Okay, yeah. We're unmuted at least. Okay, yeah.
On leaving one another, may we give of hand and heart. Let us share our benediction lovingly before we part.
Amen. And let's go in peace. Thank you for joining us today. It was so good to be together. I'm going to put the link to the coffee hour in the chat, and it is also there on your screen. And we'd love to see you over there to see one another's faces and talk together. For those of you who are calling in, if you'd like to call into the chat, you can dial the number you dialed to get here and then enter those last digits in the web address, 652-315-354. So we'll see you over in coffee hour. Thank you for joining us today, and I love you all.